Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get the notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. But I suspect if you're hanging out with me, you've already crawled off to bed. But this will be sitting here waiting for you in the morning if you so choose. I have had an amazing, stuffed full, relaxing, a little bit of movement forward, right? And ready for the week coming up. I'm good with that. That's movement forward, and I am 100% good with that. Not only that, you guys, today I finished off the final itinerary, right? The road trip, the routes that I'm taking, the campsites that I have chosen for each one of my provincial parks. I have cut it back from 12. I get away from myself, you guys. If you don't know, I'm going on a big trip in September, and it's going to be an amazing trip for me to connect with myself, to let everything that I have been working on, everything that I have been stressed about, right? Because it is in that movement, that expanding, that getting out of our comfort zone that we do push forward. And I think I have been pretty consistent in moving forward. And I'm going to have to throw a little grateful to whoever or whatever gave me that fantastic idea in that project of 54 powerful words. We're putting a deck together of 54 powerful words. But in doing that, right, we have to put the work in. So we have been randomly picking a powerful word each week on Monday, and we work with that word all week long. Different perspectives, experiences, adventures, maybe somebody else's bit of knowledge that I have picked up along the way, right? Absolutely amazing that I find myself thriving in learning, where when I was a child, oh my goodness, I had no interest in school, and I don't know if I didn't have an interest in learning, but I definitely did not have an interest in being at school, being dictated to. I couldn't even concentrate because I was so hypervigilant in my own safety, in my own surroundings, in those, right? That little bit of bullying that, I look at the school systems today, and they have those programs and those days that they actually take note, and they make a big deal of drumming up the topic of bullying. I don't know what they call it, but they're anti-bullying campaigns. There was nothing like that when I was growing up as a kid, right? It was a free for all, 100%. But I wasn't the only one in that free fall, in that free for all, right? It was something that was dictated to that which is different than us. That attention, that not including. Let's just get into the thing. We picked this word this week, trust. And this morning I was willing and able and expecting to go into some content and look in a little bit deeper in the subject. But in the morning coffee and watching a metal detecting video, in that span, I said, oh, that's not movement, Cindy, right? We need to make some movement today. You got a trip coming up. We are going to concentrate on getting this finalized, right? So that right? It's the rooting. It's moving into what we want for ourselves and those goals, those ambitions, those dreams, those desires, right? Nothing helps or nothing happens unless we move in that. So I wanted to get this done. I wanted to get this down packed, especially when next week I am paying for my camping spots. That's a lot of money, right? It's going to be over 500, almost $600 for my camp spots on this trip. So I want to part with that money now, right? So that worry and that stress isn't going to be there as to how we're going to pay for that. It's a done deal. The money is spent. You're not getting it back, right? It's in that grounding of making this trip. It's in the plans, right? But in the plans, I got to it and I pulled out a binder, right? Because now we're finalizing stuff, and this is my trip binder, right? And so I redid the itinerary. I spent all day on it. I switched the parks up just slightly from what I had done on the loose itinerary, just slightly in compounding, looking at the amount of time I want to be spending on the road each day. And because this is a rock hounding trip, right? This is for crystals and rock hounding and connecting with Mother Nature. So it was that aspect of how much time I wanted to spend at certain parks doing certain activities and stuff. So, right. So I had to take that into consideration, and I just readjusted the plan a little bit so that time is allotted for those things that are truly important for me, right? This is 100% a road trip. 10 different provincial parks in 14 days, and 2 days being spent in the United States digging for Herkimer diamonds in New York. So, this is going to be a pretty good trip. But in getting my binder ready, I had to go through all my notebooks and stuff because periodically I have been going into campsites and looking at different mines and different crystals and right different aspects that was going to make for a really enjoyable trip. And I was writing them, and I had a few notebooks on my counter or on my desk, so I was writing in all of them. So I had to go through all of them while I was cleaning my dress and get them sorted in my binder and everything. And what did I come across? Even before I started working on finalizing my itinerary, I came across a sheet that I thought would fit very nicely with this topic of trust, and looking at this topic of trust in a way that might help all of us, not just me, right? This sharing of my lessons are my lessons, right? And lots of times these lessons are specially baked for me. They're special orders, right? Not necessarily special need, but maybe so, right? One of those things I do when I'm looking at mindset and I'm looking at moving forward in kind of a anthropology evolutionary kind of state, and I understand that I am in topics that lots of people, right, all paths lead to. But when I look at different political ideas and different cultures and countries and values and religious ideas and spiritual ideas, I see the same thing everywheres, but it's always referred to as something else because of the culture, because of the beliefs, right? Because of a religion or a political idea or a tradition, it it it's called something else, but it's the same. It's just like me when I come in and I talk about the highly sensitives and the empaths. Well, those are only two mentions, but right? We can go so much further depending on your religious, political, spiritual kind of ideas on these topics. You would call what I call an empath something else. You call it a little bit something different, and that's the truth. And I find this in a lot of this topic that I delve into, and that's why I have a hard time. We all do, right? We look at those other parts of us. I call it the other parts of us, right? But some people call it the soul, right? Some people call it the guardians, or they call it our angels, or right. There's so many. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. But again, because of these ideas that we have, they call them something else. But it's the same, right? So I came across something I had written down, I guess, somewheres in the lessons. I was writing my thoughts down. And as I'm going through these books, before I throw these books away or put them away, or I wanted to make sure the camping pieces were all together, all the information that I might think I might need, that was all put away. And then anything in an important bit of information that would help me in my movement forward, or something I didn't play with yet, but I jotted it down in that expectation that somewhere's down the road I would play with it. I found this. So I'd like to read it to you, right? Read it to you, and then maybe, right, you can see, possibly, maybe I could see even better, because I got a hint of it and I just grabbed it. I haven't been back into it, right? But this is what I wrote, okay? We live in a world where we are just this close to each other. This digital age has evolved all of us in our evolution at a speed to which we have always suspected we were capable of, but never quite expecting it would or could evolve in a way that it has, in our own lifetimes. I remember as a child even listening to conversations with the adults, or in the school system, possibly in class, right? The teachers speaking to us, or in the books that I read, right? And they spoke of us of only using 10% of our brain's capacity. Though in the moment, I believe we grossly overestimated where we were at intellectually when we stated that we were at 10%. In our evolution as human souls, right? Remember what I said in how we believe that it will dictate how we think about some of these terminologies, but the lessons are the same, right? In our evolution as human souls, we are still prejudiced of that which looks, acts, and feels different in their relatability to ourselves, right? So we're talking about prejudice. We're talking about, not being accepting of that which is different from ourselves, whether it's in the way we think, the way that we feel, right? Where we are in that economic scale, right? How we are in that relatability in our intellect, in our intelligence. Okay. And this is where I thought, where trust might come into this conversation. I believe we have been working up to this point in time where we might, right? and I forget what this word is because it's so tiny. We might just be willing to stretch in our expanded intelligence and move in our evolution, right? By evolving into a human soul worthy of more than that 10% that we thought we were gifted with, right? And where does that trust come in? That trust comes in is because, right, it's obvious when you look out into the world and you look in your own surroundings, maybe in within your own family, you can tell that we're all evolving differently. We're all in different stages of our evolution, right? We're in different stages of that growth spurt in our intelligence. And this is where our choices come in, right? Because some of us have chosen to make that movement and to expand, but that puts us a little bit further away from those people who haven't even heard of these lessons. These aren't even a thought. They've never had this experience. They've never had that conversation, right? And I thought that knowledge, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that knowledge is power. That knowledge is power. And if we're not all at the same stage in our evolution, there is, right, in that natural movement of the world where we're all kind of moving together in that majority, right? But still, it's not really that balanced from one person to the next. Hello, Nancy dear. Look at all those emojis. Look at all those emojis. Thank you for popping in, dear. Right? We got this word trust this week. And I was saying, right? We're all moving different in our evolution. And sometimes it's dictated to us by our family upbringing more often than not. But epigenetically, going back from one generation to the next, that, right? We get to have experiences, adventures, and in that, there's that opportunity to learn and pass that knowledge on. And again, it puts us in a state where we might be a little bit further ahead, whereas somebody who hasn't had that opportunity to learn, maybe epigenetically, your family lineage has stayed in the same country, the same village for, right, maybe 20 generations, right? It does happen, right? And maybe we didn't get to evolve them, but this is the idea that maybe we find ourselves in this digital age where we have this opportunity to become a little bit, right, smarty pants out there by our own choosing in how we use our time and how much we want to learn, right? Oh, I'm going to come back to that one, right? But Nancy here says, I am having issues with trust. Lol. She's laughing, but she's not laughing, right? Because she's laughing because we all have those issues. Why? Because we're all in different stages of our evolution. And right, it's because people are wanting, right, that company in their lack of. And if they see somebody else evolving in their evolution, if they're finding somebody is, right, making good choices, right? Like my grandfather and great grandfather did in deciding to move to Canada. These are difficult choices that my ancestors made, right? And my father made his own difficult choices. And I made my own choices, difficult choices. And lots of times, easy choices because I couldn't face and I couldn't act on the difficult choices. But Nancy says, I'm having issues with trust. This world has gotten so dark lately. You think you know people, then all heck breaks loose. But you can consider that, right? Because I expect now that people are going to have a reaction, right? Right? Cause and effect. And as I make choices and as I make movement, those people that are with me, I expect won't always be with me. I'm so grateful that I have people who've been hanging out with me for how long have you been with me, Nancy? Oh my goodness, she's gotta been one of my very first subscribers, and she's been with me all these years, right? I would never have thought that, even with the understanding that I have now that, right, like Nancy says, you think you know people, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. But that's in our change, right? Right? 2014, 10 years, Nancy. Nancy's known me for 10 years. So grateful for that friendship because it has evolved into a friendship in those 10 years. It most definitely has. And I'm grateful that me and Nancy have evolved together. But trust, yes, I suspect that there are too few people, right? They say trust the universe. Yeah, but right, the universe is made up of all kinds and in all different stages of their evolution, right? And not all are on the same kind of movement that we're making, right? So it is in that idea of taking those unsteady steps and being able to be upfront and being seen and being heard. And we talked about being genuine yesterday because in that genuine, right, Nancy found me, right? In that genuine, Nancy's still with me, right? And maybe I might go off and do something silly or say something silly with that. Hopefully, more than 10%, right, of intelligence that has come along my way, right? But maybe not. But I'm going to take that as a good sign, right? When and if it should happen, of some movement, and whether or not it's movement that Nancy made or movement that I made or movement that we both made in that choice to go our separate ways, right? But Nancy's right, it's painful when you invest, right, in those humans and in those souls. And it's hard when we have to face something that we didn't think would ever come to be, right? But it happens and it has happened and it will happen and it will happen again 100%. But that is evolution. And I don't think we should kick ourselves. There's a reason why we just keep coming back and we have no idea. It is in those interactions. I would hate to think that I came back and I'd be going, "Where's Nancy? Who's Nancy?" Right? And I would miss my friend Nancy. So, right? Lots of times I believe that we just, right, get that clean slate in order to find in our own movement, in our own stage of our evolution, right? Whether or not me and Nancy find each other again, right? Without feeling that I'm missing something because Nancy's not in my life for whatever reason. Nancy's not in my life. So let me read that to you really quickly again because I have to be able to see this word trust because we do live in a digital age, right? Where we are evolving so fast. I don't need this. Where we're evolving so fast, so quickly. And it's going to be in our choices that's going to dictate the directions that we're going to move in. But I think we are going to do ourselves a detrimental loss if we can't be more willing to be accepting, more willing to be tolerant, more willing to be listening and seeing people with different ideas, different perspectives, understanding that we are not the be all to end all, right? That we are our own creations, right? We are our own creations, and we are not always going to rub each other well in our evolution. Why? Because we're in different stages of our evolution, and we're all going to get there, but when, right? That's in our choices, and it's part of what I'm showing up here every single day, right? In that creation of the best human being, knowing that I can only control, right? I can't control that, but I can inspire that. And that was the word we had last week. And remember, I attached it to influence, right? Because it's what inspires us that influence us is the most. Influence is the be all to end all, right? And that's where we're going to be able to all get to the same stage in our evolution before we start changing into, right, that next stage. Let's just get through this stage, right? Okay, you guys, right? A little bit of food for thought. Is there any way, now that we're seeing in this digital age how close we are, we're getting to see, real people, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of make believe out there, right? And it's going to be in our choices as to what to believe, and it's going to be in our choices as to what content to take in, right? Whether or not to just go with the majority and just go with that natural growth, which will, right, won't leave you at the head of the pack, right? But you might not be way in the back either, right? Hanging out with me, we're walking for a little while, right? Each one of us is going to pick up something along the way. But wouldn't it be amazing with a little bit of willingness to have a little bit of compassion, tolerance, right? And express that with kindness to that which is different from us, right? So that somebody else might be comfortable enough to hang with that which is a little bit different. Okay, you guys. Thank you, Nancy, for popping in tonight. Ah, you're a sweetheart. You're a sweetheart. Everybody, that's my good chair. We're back to work. The roof that puts the roof over my head. Grateful to have that job to ground in, right? To give me a little bit of a different perspective, right, on that movement, right, that I can choose to make, right? I could have chosen something different today than working on that trip for September. 2 months away, you guys. How exciting is that? And the trip is now going into creative mode because I got all the technical stuff, I think, taken care of now, right? Yeah, fun times. Okay, you guys. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.